This is a story about dogs.
Generally, the dog catcher is the Snidely Whiplash of the city employees. He's lurking behind a corner waiting to nab their dog as it runs out of the house for a moment.
And about dog catchers.
Sam shouldn't run. I know that. But you've got a problem here, as I say, when you have children in the house, little kids visiting, and it's summer, and you have your screen door on, and the little kid isn't tall enough to put that latch back on, you got a dog that's going to get out that screen door one way or the other.
By the most current and comprehensive estimates, there are over 35 million dogs in this country, or 1 dog for every 6 people, and that number is growing by 6,000 every hour of every day. This exploding population is a problem not only for the nearly 400,000 people bitten each year, or the unknown number of people forced to clean a mess from their lawn, but also for the 30 million households that own dogs. For when a dog is picked up by a pound, however short its stay, it is by no means certain that it will receive humane or even reasonable care.
A place that's licensed to pick up animals who are simply running loose. If they're licensed to do this, then it should be their responsibility to see that the owners are notified and come out, pay their fine, and get their dogs back. If they're not going to do this, then they're operating a little bit of a shady operation in my book.
There are thousands of city and county agencies that impound loose dogs. Some pounds are privately owned and contract with local governmental bodies to supply their patrol and pound services. Others are owned and operated by local government. But while all animal control agencies have the same general purpose, care and treatment of animals varies widely. Some areas operate large, well-kept, efficient, and humane pounds, and where this is the case, the agency in charge fulfills the function of keeping from the streets dangerous or unwanted dogs. But when pound facilities are inadequate, whatever the reason, it's certain that dog lovers and owners will start to complain.
We are a bureau of the state with certain very defined duties. We must investigate cruelty complaints, and we must see that the law is enforced. And we don't
Ruth Deshane is executive director of the Minnesota Humane Society, and she discusses the problem.
Unless you saw my reports, some of the things that actually happened. But we have animals starving to death. When we get a complaint, we go out and check it, or if we can't get out, there are only 2 of us to cover the state. We have investigative agents that we have recruited and trained throughout the state in most areas. If we don't have, then we ask a sheriff to go and do it.
What kinds of conditions have you found now as relate to dogs and cats, particularly in this metropolitan area?
Well, we have problems with dog pounds in some instances, and I mentioned to you earlier that we had been out to Madison, Minnesota. That's 180 miles one way because their dog pound was such a bad situation. We took 2 veterinarians with us and helped them to plan a decent dog facility.
What kind of facility was there originally when you got there?
They had 2 packing boxes pushed up against the outside wall of the utility building for the sewage disposal plant. Now, they weren't proud of this. They were pretty ashamed of the fact that they didn't have something better. They couldn't possibly heat this structure. Actually, I can't call it a structure. An adult German Shepherd wouldn't have been able to stand upright in either of the cages, and they were open. They were screened in on a couple of sides, and they were open to the weather. And you know, in the western part of our state, in the winter particularly, the winds are pretty bad and the snow is pretty bad. They couldn't have cleaned this situation at all, those cages. They just couldn't have. We told them it would have been better not to have picked up the animals. Let them run loose on the streets. If a municipality or a city doesn't want to provide for the animals it picks up, it might just as well let them run loose. And of course, recently we've had problems with the dog catching facilities in our own communities. St. Paul is doing a good job. They're trying to build a new facility, and I hope they get the money to do it. Minneapolis is having problems at the present time.
Local humane societies don't consider the St. Paul pound the best, but they do consider it to be adequate. The pound is completely enclosed, protecting the animals from the weather. It has room for about 80 dogs. A third of all the dogs that come in are retrieved by their owners, and few complaints related to the care of the animals are ever received.
In the morning, our kennels are cleaned every morning, and then they're fed then, and at noon, they're cleaned again to make sure there isn't any droppings or anything in the cage, so the dogs have to stay in there with it. We have 2 different size cages. They're adequate for the dog to move around. much room. And there's always someone here that checks on it in case one of them is, say, is sick and has a diarrhea or something, where if he does leave a mess, why it's always clean right away. And they're fed in individual food pans. There's no feeding them like just dropping it on the floor of the cage or anything like that. If the dog has any type of a tag on it, say a license, we call our city clerk and we find out who it is and call the owner as soon as possible, which normally is within an hour to an hour and a half after the dog is brought into the pond. We never wait, say, a day or two. And if they have rabies tags on them, we contact the animal hospital where the tags were issued, and we find the owner through that. We check all the ads in the papers in case there's anything like that.
How often do you check the ads in the papers?
Every day. Every morning. We get the morning paper delivered for that purpose specifically. If there's any doubt at all, we call the people, tell them we have a dog that looks like it, tell them to come out and identify it, how long it'll be here, so they don't wait a week, and stuff like that.
Why is it that the city of St. Paul operates its own pound as a municipal function rather than to contract the job out to a private company?
Well, I think our personnel stay here longer by having them through civil service. We don't have as big a turnover in personnel. A private person is in business for himself, see, and he's there to make a profit. When you have people working on a salaried basis, they're not worried about the profit as much as a private outfit would be.
I didn't mean to infer that the situation over at the St. Paul Dog Pound was perfect. If it were, they wouldn't be trying to add on or build a facility that's going to cost them, what, $186,000? I believe that's about the figure. I have seen the plans for their new facility, and I do hope the people of the community are going to get behind them and see to it that they get it. But they're trying to do this, see? They're trying to build a new one. They're not satisfied with what they have. They know that it's not perfect.
Do you have an idea yourself whether or not a municipally run organization has the ability inherently to provide a better kind of service than an operation that's run
I think they
privately?
have better control over their people. Perhaps that's the thing, I think. I really don't know which would be best. I think it would be a big headache for a city to try to run a dog pound, but I do believe that they have much better control over their employees than if they hire a man or person. These days it might be a woman, I don't know about that. But if they hire someone, give them a contract, and then that person has to hire a number of other people to do the job, and if the man you have hired, the city has hired, is not available too often, if he's occupied with other things and he trusts these people he's hired to do a good job and they don't do a good job, I don't think the city has as good a control as they do if it is municipally owned.
Yeah. Hey, come on, give me that. Come on. Easy. Come on. Easy. Come here.
The city of Minneapolis, like many other communities, contracts with a privately owned kennel. The kennel meets a number of certain basic city specifications, and in return for a predetermined payment, the kennel provides the city with a pound facility and 7 patrol trucks 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Unlike the St. Paul Pound, however, Tonka Kennels, serving Minneapolis, has been the focus of numerous complaints lodged by dog owners. The complaints almost invariably have charged the kennel with inadequate and inhumane treatment of impounded dogs. Ruth Duchesne of the State Humane Society characterizes the pound as completely inadequate.
We've had a number of complaints, and when I say a number, I mean like a stack about 6 inches thick of complaints that have come in regarding people who've lost pets and have called the dog pound and have not been able to, the dog catchers have not been able to identify the animals out there enough so that the owner would know whether it was his dog or not. And before I go any further, I should say we expect owners to keep their animals at home, and we preach this all the time. Animals should not run loose. They should be confined, and they should wear an ID tag and a license.
Well, now you've been out there and you've seen the facility. Can you compare that to other facilities and describe what you would consider to be some of the inadequacies in terms of the physical plant?
Well, cages, of course, are getting old and warped and things of that kind, and this is kind of bad for the animals. Some of the doors don't have fasteners. This is bad because you have to be able to keep an animal under control once you get it, you know. And we've mentioned all these things repeatedly and have hoped that there would be corrections made, but this just doesn't happen. I know when I have been there, I have asked, first I had better say this, the federal law says that animals must have access to water for 1 hour at a time, twice a day. We have asked when we've been out there for a dish of water, and we have discovered without any question in my mind at all that the animals are thirsty, the animals that we've given the dish of water to. So I feel most concerned about this, and deeply so, because I cannot see why it's impossible for people to bend an elbow, if that's all that's necessary, and I think it is, to put a dish of water down for an animal. I wish you could go out and look for yourself. It's my opinion that kennels do not hire enough help. The people who manage kennels do not, and dog pounds, do not have enough help, most of them. And because they don't have enough help, the one person or two persons they hire try very hard and can't do a very good job. And it's pretty sad. It really is.
Is it your impression that an inadequate job is being done out of
Yes,
Tonka?
yes, indeed it is. I feel that there has to come a time when the public has to be made aware that a man who is, or an organization, whichever it may be, who is accepting money from a municipality to do the job is not meeting the standards of the state cruelty statutes or of the USDA or any of the standards that are set up for maintenance of the kennel and care of the animals. And I feel that this is presently true from my own experience from having been out there. And I'm speaking now very definitely as the executive director of the Minnesota Humane Society. And as I said, this is only one of the many dog pounds we check, but this is one that has given us considerable grief.
If the number of complaints reportedly received by the 3 local humane societies is any indication, then Tonka Kennels has given a good many people considerable grief.
My dog was supposedly had bit a child, so I had authorized Tonka Kennels to pick him up, and they're supposed to hold him for a 15-day quarantine. And I think they held him probably about 7-8 days and sold him to the university without my knowledge.
Recently, the Minnesota State Attorney General filed suit against William O. Cooley, owner of the kennel, and 5 John Does as partners or employees. The complaint charged that the defendants had, quote, engaged in practices which constitute cruel and careless treatment of animals, as well as the willful and negligent sale, loss, and or destruction of animals which do not belong to them, and which defendants knew or should have known they had no right to dispose of in any manner, unquote. The Attorney General charged that the operation had failed to adequately feed or water the animals, that dead or diseased animals have been found with live, healthy animals, and that the kennel had allowed an inhumane and cruel level of overcrowding in the cages or pens. He alleged, too, that the kennel had reported to owners that an animal had been lost or stolen, when in truth the defendants knew or should have known that the animals were, in fact, either there or had been sold for experimentation.
By the wildest stretch of the imagination, no one could ever think that this is a fun job, this business of picking up loose-running dogs, because it isn't. It's a big job, and it's a terrible headache, because you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
My dog was supposedly had bit a child, so I had authorized Tonka Kennels.
Gordon Kanan, a businessman in the suburb of Chaska, also served by Tonka Kennels.
And I think they held him probably about 7-8 days and sold him to the university without my knowledge. And I went back to find a dog, and they told me that he had someone had broken in and stolen him. So
When did you go back to look for the dog?
I would say probably 3 days before the quarantine was up. And then at that time they told me someone had stolen him. And about 4 days later, I found him down at the university, and he had been operated on. They had done a heart probe on him. And when I first went down there, they had told me that the dog wasn't there. So this was on Friday, and Saturday I went back again, and one of the orderlies there let me go through the pens, and I found my dog. And at this point, I came back to Chaska, and I called my local deputies and my attorney. We had the university police put a hold on the dog at this point so they couldn't destroy the evidence. And then on Monday, we went down again and confronted the man in charge at the university. And then he admitted that the dog was there at this time.
What did the representatives from Tonka Kennel say when you confronted them with this?
They didn't say nothing. No explanation at all. They had seemed they knew the dog was down there all the time.
Didn't they offer any defense?
No defense at all. They didn't make no statements, no nothing as why the dog got down there or nothing like this here.
State law requires that Minnesota pounds must keep animals at least 5 days before euthanizing or selling them for research. If a dog has been impounded for biting someone, it must be kept for 15 days. If at the end of the waiting period a dog is unclaimed, most pounds in the Twin Cities area sell the dogs to the University of Minnesota for $3 each.
What's the nature of the facility here? What do you do here, and how do you handle your
The
operation?
University of Minnesota is, of course, a very large institution. And I have personally two major assignments. I am the chairman.
Dr. William Kubicek is in charge of the Animal Research Facility at the University of Minnesota. The facility uses over 5,000 dogs for research every year. The operation is large, clean, and frequently inspected. The facility uses animals for research in nearly every scientific discipline, but because of a new law, Tonka Kennels is no longer allowed to sell dogs to the university.
Signed the task or the responsibility by the dean of the medical school and the administrative board to oversee the proper feeding and care and humane use experimentally of all animals. Then we also have the responsibility for the acquisition of dogs and cats and other animals. Now, in particular, the dogs and cats are received from two sources. Number one, they come from licensed dealers that are buying and selling animals, and they are licensed by the United States Department of Agriculture. The other source of animals are those that have been impounded under public authority by the various municipalities, and these are stray animals and almost always dogs and cats. All of the contractors that have been working with municipalities under contract to collect animals have been turning over their unclaimed animals for research purposes to the University of Minnesota and a few other licensed institutions. There has been no problem with this essentially until the United States Congress passed a law in 1970 that gave the United States Department of Agriculture the responsibility to license dealers that sell animals to us, and that they must then conform with the U.S. Department of Agriculture regulations as to cage size and other facilities, and this then created the problem. Tonka Kennels in particular felt they could not pass the regulations, and as I understand it, didn't even apply for a license. The Department of Agriculture then ruled that it would be illegal for the university or for Tonka Kennels to dispose of those animals that they have collected under public authority by any other means except to euthanize them and dispose of their carcasses. And they were not even allowed to give them away. So they are now then uselessly killed. They accomplish nothing with their lives. And while the University Medical School badly needs these animals for research where they could be contributing something to the well-being of both human beings and the animal medical science.
All right, now, Dr. Kubicek, how much of a problem has there been with people coming here looking for their dogs that have been lost? Is this something that occurs?
Yes, once in a while we have people here. For many years now, some 20 years, we've practiced what we call an open door policy, that anyone is welcome to look around or bring their camera, or their newspaper reporters can come and go, and if they'd like a guided tour, we'll provide that, and if you'd like to just go by yourself and look around, you're certainly welcome.
Have many people found their lost dog here?
I don't know the exact number, but occasionally there'll be problems in that the people did not locate their animal at one of the pounds, and the dog may end up here, and if they can find it, we always return it.
Dr. Kubitschek checked his records and said that since the beginning of this year until late July, when Tonka Kennels was forced to stop selling animals to the university, 3 dogs had been discovered by their owners at the research center. 2 of them had come from Tonka Kennels. Paul and Betty Norquist, a Minneapolis couple, recently won a settlement and a judgment against Tonka Kennels. They said they had been told that their dog wasn't there, but that ultimately they discovered the dog had been there, but that it had been killed before the end of the 5-day waiting period.
Our dog was lost in December and picked up by a person who turned it over to Tonka Kennels. We called Tonka Kennels many times, and they denied that they had the dog there, that they even had a dog similar to it. And so we visited the kennels and searched the kennels and couldn't find the dog. And at that time we weren't positive that the dog was at Tonka Kennels until we put an ad in the paper, and this person who had found our dog answered the ad. He said, "It's at Tonka Kennels." So after he had been gone 5 days, we called Tonka Kennels. Tonka Kennels said at 11 o'clock at night, "Come out at 11:30.
Had you already contacted Tonka at this
yes.
point? You already had done that a number of times.
Before that, right?
No, they said come out at 11:30. Now, their records show that they killed the dog at 11:25 on our way out there.
That's right. The former manager called me, told me to come out there after I raised Cain with him at 9 o'clock that evening. And he told me to be out there by 11:30. He would meet me. We would go through the kennel. He was frightened. And also, he would give me access to all the records that he had so I could determine from those records whether my dog had been picked up by Tonka. When I arrived there, I went in, and I was denied access to the kennels. I demanded my dog. I was denied access to the records, and he called the police department to remove me from the premises. The witness that had originally picked up my dog said Tonka Kennels had called him. He talked to the manager, and the manager told him to call me and tell me to be out there on Tuesday morning at 10:30, before 10:30, before they killed the dogs. My daughter and I went out at 9:30 in the morning to enable us to go through the kennel, the entire kennel, which we did. We came out, there was no dog there of any description pertaining to ours. And also, I asked Mr. Wolf, the former manager, if I could then see his records, which he had promised I could see the night before. He went over to his filing cabinet. He found the record of the pickup order on my dog. The pickup order date had been changed on the top. Also, my dog was a Cairn Terrier. They had denied at least 20 times. They had no terriers of any kind out there. And in the logbook, which I was, this was still on Tuesday morning, I looked through their logbook, and my dog was classified as a wire-haired terrier. So as many phone calls as I made asking for any terrier, they denied they had a terrier. When in fact their records showed they had at one time. It had been picked up at Mr. Johnson's home, and then running across the column, it had been destroyed. This was shown in court at 11:25 the night before when we were out there.
We took them to conciliation court, and we won $340, and they appealed it to a higher court, municipal court, and we won again. Their argument was that they had not broken any law, and that was basically their only argument.
Yes, right. They had not broken any law.
In August, William Cooley announced that at the end of his contract in January, he would give up the ownership and operation of Tonka Kennels. At that point, the city of Minneapolis called for bids on a new contract, and by late September, the city accepted the low bid from Metropolitan Animal Patrol. As it turns out, the new organization, scheduled to start operations in January, is administered by 3 current employees of Tonka Kennels, any or all of which may ultimately be named as defendants in the Attorney General's suit. A further association with Tonka Kennels was established when it was learned that the building the new kennels are being built in is owned by the 7-Eleven Corporation, a corporation that is wholly owned by William Cooley and his wife.
And I will be sick if I hear that the people who have had anything to do with Tonka Kennels get another license or franchise or whatever it is to operate this thing again. It's just like reopening a can of worms.
In granting the new contract to Metropolitan Animal Patrol, the Minneapolis City Council rejected the charge of guilt by association with the old operation. However, a new letter of protest was sent to the council from the Minnesota Humane Society. Referring to the 3 employees of Tonka Kennels, it said in part, "We feel that they probably share with Mr. Cooley the responsibility for the charges of neglect and mistreatment of animals."
Problems that we've had in the past, mixed up with dogs and whatnot, have stemmed from the current facility that we're using.
John Gilbraith is one of the co-managers of Tonka Kennels. He's worked there for 2 years, and now he's one of the principals in the Metropolitan Animal Patrol. He says the new facility will allow him to do a better job.
And information is put on the pickup slip as to description, location, where it was picked up, time and date, any identifying marks and everything. This information is then transferred onto the log sheet up in the front. Well, the problems that we've had in the past have been from mix-up in dogs in the cages. Right. The animals have to be let outside in the run areas during the day to get their exercise. They're fed and watered outside during the day. And at the end of the day, they're brought back and put in their respective cages. Now, if a dog's identification tag that's put on him when he comes in should happen to get off of him in the outside run when he's out with the other dogs, which is easily done, there's a possibility that he could go into the wrong cage. Cage, for instance, of a dog that has been here for 5 days when actually, in fact, this dog has only been here for 3 days. The problems that we've had in the past have stemmed from situations like that, where the university, when we were selling dogs to the university, the gentleman would come in the morning, take the dog from the cage that had been here 5 days, or so he thought, and bring it to the university. Now, with the new facility, it's a completely indoor operation. The dog, from the time it comes in until it is released, will not be moved from his cage. The cages will be 3-by-6 foot run areas. There'll be 139 of those. The animals will have constant food, constant water, and constant room to get ample exercise, assuming that they're only going to be there for the 5 day. As far as cleaning the facility, the floors will be beveled. There'll be a slope down each aisle. There'll be a drain trough running the length of the kennel in front of each run section, so that the dog will not have to be moved from the run when it's cleaned. It can be sprayed down. Also, our security system at the new facility will be a lot tighter than it is. The facility here, just because of its geographical layout, makes it impossible to keep track of all the sections of the kennel at the same time. And as a result, when there are 10, 12 people back there looking for dogs, it's hard to keep track of everyone and ensure that no dogs are stolen out the back door. The new facility